Duran Premium Cigars, one of the fastest growing boutique cigar companies, providing smokers a portal into the old Cuban tradition of perfect balance and the lost art of progressive flavor construction. Roberto Pelayo Duran began his career in tobacco over 2 decades ago in Havana, where his reputation grew within Cuban circles. The creation of Duran Premium Cigars has given Roberto the platform to introduce a series of cigars that offer the same quality, construction, and detail which he perfected while in Cuba. Brands include the ultra-premium Roberto P. Duran Premium Cigar Series, Azan Cigars, Nea, and Baracoa. Duran Cigars uses a seed-to-humidor approach, as all tobacco is grown in their farms and rolled in their factory in Estelí, Nicaragua. Rollers have been carefully chosen to carry out Roberto's precise method to ensure progressive flavor in each cigar. Duran Cigars invites you to make their premium your standard. Experience the world through the eyes of an icon with the new Macanudo Inspirado line. Created for a global palate, Macanudo Inspirado defies convention. Handcrafted with the world's finest tobaccos, Inspirado delivers a unique international smoking experience. Find Inspirado Orange at fine tobaccos everywhere, and Inspirado Black online and in your favorite catalogs. Ready to be inspired? Check out Macanudo Inspirado now at macanudo.com. CAO has brought you iconic cigars over the years. Brasilia, Italia, La Traviata, done in a playful nature with a unique twist. Travel to the exciting world of CAO and back in just under an hour with any of the groundbreaking CAO World Blends. Test the boundaries of style with new age brands in the 95 rated Flathead. Honor the past with new classics like Pilon. Treat your palate to an array of flavors with Soulfire and Moon Trance. At CAO, the experiences are limitless. So what's your next move?
Hey, Paul, what's up?
What's up, Mark?
Did you hear about the new cigar that's coming out?
Which one is that? There's like 800 new ones every week.
The one with the Connecticut broadleaf wrapper.
Oh, really? I love Connecticut broadleaf. Who makes it?
I think it's Nicaraguan.
So Nicaraguan binder and filler, or it's made in a factory in Nicaragua?
I always have to Google these, and it's taking me like an hour to find out what it is.
If this is a frequent conversation with your cigar buddies, look no further than Stogie Geeks News, the only cigar news podcast on the internet. Will Cooper, the man behind cigar-coop.com, and Paul Asadorian from the Stogie Geeks produce a weekly show covering the latest cigar news, new blends, cigar manufacturer announcements, and more. Subscribe to the video version on YouTube or get the audio version in your favorite podcast catcher. Head on over to stogienews.tv to subscribe today.
Welcome back to the Stogie Geek Show. This is episode 209, November 14th, 2016. Will Cooper from Studio C, tonight calling it the Nomad Studio, in North Carolina. We have Mark, Riley, and Tyler at the controls at the Villiger North America Studios in Rhode Island. And we're joined by our special guest co-host, Tom Pearson of Commonwealth Cedar Spills. And we're going to do another Hot Topic segment, which we really appreciate the good feedback we've gotten on these. So these are just kind of topics that are on the minds of cigar enthusiasts. They can be a little controversial. And I debated, actually, whether to do this one or not. But I think it was so important, and it did. We have a new president in Donald Trump, and as part of our election process, he became the president. So now we have to kind of support him, obviously, as the president. I think most of the cigar enthusiasts out there are really, really good. There's a few Facebook things, but I think there's always a few exceptions. But it's been good conversations, definitely in the cigar lounges. And the big question there's a big question that's come with a new president, especially since it's a change in political party, and that is what does this mean for the cigar industry? And the cigar industry very much is in the crosshairs of this election for not that it was an election issue, but for us it was. I mean, this is
absolutely.
It was absolutely for us. And there's two fronts that we can look at this on. That it's going to have an impact somehow. I think we'll see it. It's FDA, which we could talk about, and Cuba, which we could talk about. I'll start with the easier one first, which is Cuba. And then we'll kind of go into the FDA one, which I think is going to be a little different.
And before you start, Coop, I mean, kudos to you. kudos to you for wanting to talk about this tonight, because as individuals, as a family, as a neighborhood, a community, a culture, and as a country, we don't get anywhere by not talking about things, by, well, should we? Yeah, you should confront these issues, talk these things through, build a consensus, a compromise, or at least speak to it. So, kudos for you for bringing this topic up tonight. It's a great thing. But yeah, Cuba.
Yeah, and kudos to you for basically not saying what. Because
I'm out of here. Gotta go. Bye. No.
No, and I would have been sensitive to that. I did have a plan B. So, in terms of that, so Cuba. I mean, so here's the thing that I think we got to understand about Cuba, and why this is something where we could very well see some change, and here's why. The Cuba's been opened up. There's been the President Obama eased a lot of the restrictions. He started to reestablish diplomatic relationships. There were some things he was able to do as president within the confines of the law that he was able to open some things up. And we've seen that particularly with travel to Cuba. Our embassy's been reopened up there. We can now bring back Cuban cigars from abroad, which has been a very controversial topic.
Yep.
And the new president, Donald Trump, he's not exactly been on the same page with this. In terms of, this is how I'll surmise it, is I don't think he's against reestablishing diplomatic relations, but I think he wants it on terms that are going to be beneficial to, one, the U.S., and two, the people of Cuba.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I think there's two things that come out of this, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I think one is this is what I think is going to happen before I get to the decision. I don't think he's going to say when he gets inaugurated, he's going to rip everything out that the president did. I don't see him doing that. What I do see him doing is possibly using some of this now as leverage in terms of further negotiations with Cuba. And that's really the first item. So he could very well do that. I mean, if it doesn't work out, it's something you got to watch for. So certainly I could see that as far as that goes. The other thing that I do see is, the embargo is not lifted. The embargo's got to go through an act of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
My gut's telling me we may not see this in his first term. This could be something that's a lower priority item until he gets to a point where, I don't know if he's going to push this through Congress, nor do I don't know if anyone in Congress is going to take the bull by the horn with this right now.
Yeah.
So I think we could be looking at we could be in this state right now for the next 4 years. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in regards to Cuba, my thoughts in general, nothing happens quickly between nation states or governments, but it's nation states, the U.S. and Cuba. The embargo with Cuba, it kind of seems like it happened overnight with Kennedy, but there was a whole build-up as to why it happened and what was going on then. With what President Obama has done in reaching out to do something with Cuba, when for so many years our government, our leader, whomever that was in office at any given time, had done nothing, it didn't help the Cuban people. Now, and I think that's what we all want. We want the average Cuban citizen to have a better way of life. That's my feeling, at least. To do that, you need an economic engine. You need things happening. And granted, they have somewhat of trade with other countries, just not the U.S., at least directly. It's a great first step. Now, I think a lot of the things that could or could not happen with the U.S. government, our president, our leadership, initially it will not benefit the Cuban people because they're not in power. They're still a communist government. But they get by, they survive, and I guess they do thrive and prosper. But again, not like they would perhaps in any other spot in the world or under any other government. But I think it had to happen. At some point in time, you've got to engage in trade, and you've got to engage in building a relationship. So I think it was a great thing that it happened. But as you said, it's not going to happen quickly. Nothing's going to happen, overnight as far as the embargo just being completely lifted. It'll take baby steps, but things always do. I think when you take short steps, baby steps, move slowly, it perhaps is better because it allows things to evolve. You don't make decisions out of just some raw, heated passion or concern. Now, on the downside of all you've said, Coop, in regards to Cuba, there is, yes, it was a good thing, in my opinion, he opened it up, but I think maybe the fact that he opened it up in this current election, it hurt the Democratic Party, because there are a lot of folks in Miami who used to come from Cuba, know what it's like, and are like, no, it's not going to be helpful to my family and my friends who are down there now. That wasn't a good thing. We want our land back. We want our properties. We want things. Well, the only way you're going to get some of those things is to start to normalize relations. So maybe that had an impact. But I think ultimately, Donald Trump, our president-elect, is a businessman. He's going to look at, as you said, what things are good for business, what are good for the U.S. economy and the U.S. people, and also what benefits and what's going to help the Cuban people. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. Now, I'm happy the cigars embargo has been lifted. I've traveled to Europe a couple times. I was in London about a month or two ago, and it always astounds me what Cuban cigars go for in London. Now, granted, that's, if you live in London, that's your home. That's what you're used to paying. You don't think anything of it, and there are some great Cuban cigars, vintage to current, pseudo current releases. They're great cigars, but the cost, it's just, I just look at it, I'm like, wow, it's a special occasion cigar. But it's interesting. So Cuba is definitely one of those things. And Donald Trump may say one thing and do another as a candidate. And I think once he becomes president, he'll do and say things, and we hope for the best.
Yep. I mean, that's all, and you brought a really good point. Actually, you brought a good point about the business aspect, and I think that's going to play a key role. I think there's one other thing that we have to look at, and this is supposed to happen in 2 years. We don't know what that exactly is going to mean. But Raul Castro has said he's not seeking "quote unquote" re-election. Okay,
right.
So there could be there could very well be a new leader in Cuba in 2 years, which could totally.
But is he still a communist? Are they going to throw open? It's like, it would be so cool if Raul, in my opinion, Raul goes, yeah, we're not going to do this communist thing anymore. And all my good old buddies and cronies or whoever, if you were with me and you were in government, you can't be in government anymore. We're going to put this back to the people, and we're going to take those bad steps and those missteps, but we're going to form a better government for the people. That would be great. But to get the Fidels to maybe step back a bit, and to get all their cronies and buddies and current people. But the thing is, you can't throw, it's like trying to throw free energy into the marketplace. If we could all just go out and drive all we want to do and use all the electricity, it doesn't quite work that way with economics and current infrastructure. You can't just go down to Cuba and put a Starbucks on every corner. Nobody can afford it. You can't go to North Korea and just say, hey, we're going to build a Walmart. No one could afford to buy anything there, and it would be crazy. You got to take those baby steps, and I think it's a good approach. So maybe, it'd be great if the Fidels stepped back. I hope they replace them with a young Cuban, someone who's doesn't have the legacy, but it can appreciate the history.
Yeah, no, the last thing I'll say on Cuba, and I think I've told this story on the show. When I was with one of the guys from Smooth Doors Radio, we were walking through one of the squares in Old Havana, and there was a guy protesting. And the guy was yelling out, anti-Donald Trump, right? And there were cops there, and they weren't even stopping him, which I thought. Yeah. And what I came to learn as I started talking to people in Cuba, and I really did make some friends down there, which was
absolutely, yeah,
they're great people. They look, you could say what you want about President Obama, okay, and that's another topic, but I'll tell you what, they look at President Obama as doing something positive here, and. So they have some, they like the fact that we're coming in there now, and I think they hate to see that go away. So I'm not ready to push a panic button yet. I think it is something that's going to be a longer process, but at the same time, I don't see anything immediate happening, but I think it's something worth watching, certainly. This is going to become an issue in the next, throughout its first term.
Oh yeah. And I think as far as our election was concerned, as I mentioned, the fact that Obama did something with Cuba, all the voters in and around Miami, in that area with the big Cuban population, who were looking at it like, wow, maybe this is rewarding Cuba, and I'm not happy with that, and this and that. But it had to happen. I mean, you can't keep a population of the world under a thumb and not. I know why the embargo came into place.
Yeah.
You just can't keep it that way forever. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. So hopefully we'll take some baby steps. We'll open it up more. I want to get down there. I've yet to go down there. I know a bunch of folks have. I want to get down there before we move in there, because the U.S. tends to do that. We cover it with concrete. We put in Starbucks, and you lose the history and you lose some of the traditions and passion. And to maybe get a better deal on cigars. I heard something the other day, and I don't know if you know or have heard this. I heard Cuba is one of the largest importers of Dominican tobacco because they've had such really cruddy weather, and they've had some challenging tobacco crops in the last 4 years.
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that there's some strict import rules. Not to say you can't do it, but I do know there's some strict import rules about it.
Yeah.
And the point about the Starbucks, I think if you watch some of the Cuba segments I talked exactly on that point. Yeah. Where you go down the Malecon, which is the big the highway, well, not the highway, the road on the waterfront and with the wall, and right now there's no commercialization, and I think if this thing opens up, it's going to change. So I would advise definitely going there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, and I just, it's like anywhere. I want the people to have a better quality of life. I don't necessarily want them to have our quality of life, because there's some things about ours. It's not. We're not the healthiest lifestyle in the world. Not cigars. I love my cigars, but I'm cutting back on the fried foods and the this and the that, and the Cuban folks. And I've heard Skip Martin was down in Cuba a while back, and he was on Wi-Fi, and he was texting, and he's like, the food here is just incredible. It's just the people, the rum, everything is like, that's the history, the tradition, the culture. And I'm sure there are people there that will make sure it doesn't get lost, but a big influx of money would be crazy. So I think, like all things that will happen in the next 4 years with our new president, let's take it slow. Let's give feedback. Let's be involved as citizens on a local, a state, a federal level, and it will work out. After all that craziness with the election, and I was up till 3 a.m. Tuesday night, I saw the things going on Facebook and Twitter, and my whole comment was, our country will persevere, and we're bigger than any one leader as a people, as a nation. There's nothing that one leader can do in our country that's so bad that 30 million or whatever our population is can't correct, if that's the right word. So we'll be okay as long as we all, we're there for one another.
Totally agree. And that actually brings us to the second part of this, and that's the FDA. So the one thing that I think there's some beacon of hope or optimism, and and there's a couple of, I think there's a good basis for the optimism. The first thing is Donald Trump is pledging to reduce regulations. I mean, that's one of in his contract with America. It's very clear, for every regulation put in, 2 are going to come out. Mm-hmm. The second thing is the vice president has been known to be, I don't want to say he supported the cigar industry. I think that's a strong word, but he did support the bill when he was a congressman for the exemption, and he also loosened up some laws in his as governor of Indiana on cigar bars. So I think there's some things. So I think there's some things there. Yeah. That being said, couple of things. Donald Trump can't undo the regulations by himself.
No,
he can he cannot do that. So it has to go when he says he's going to repeal Obamacare, repeal and replace Obamacare, he's not to do that. He has to introduce a law to repeal it.
Right. And folks think executive orders are, I think a lot of people have a misperception, perhaps they do, that executive orders are something the president just signs and it happens. and it can counter any existing law. It is a law, and it will, if it's not a law, it will become a law once you sign it and put it out there. It doesn't exactly work that way, and executive orders can be overturned by a court. They can be overturned by the next president. For me, as far as the FDA and the cigar industry, we still have a lot of great folks in Congress, and they're still going to be in Congress, that supported the exemption around premium cigars. And I know when new funding bills come up and budget bills come up, hopefully they'll put that in there, and they'll become a nice compromise, which is what we should be doing as a country, as as a country, as citizens, and as a House and a Congress, and all three, judicial, legislative, and executive. We should be compromising for the betterment of the country. And executive orders are kind of crazy that way, and I think something good will come out of it. It's just going to take some time, and I think maybe you were going to mention it, but I'll mention it. I think Rudy Giuliani is a huge cigar guy, and I think whether he's involved in his cabinet or in some other position, and I think he even mentioned it on CNN when they were interviewing him, how this FDA regulation is impacting Florida as well as jobs outside the country. So I think we have hope. We really have hope.
I'm a little less optimistic on the Giuliani thing than a lot of people are. Not to say he won't, but the reason is I'm not sure if that's going to be if he joins the cabinet, and I even have some doubts if he is. I mean, I can see him going either way.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be in another area. Yeah. I also am this is me being the skeptic. I haven't seen him do much beforehand to help stop the regulations.
Yeah. Well, being a New York guy.
That's what but it's not a bad thing to still have him. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, no, not at all. He's a voice, and the more, and that's what, hey, that's what this, we're in a republic. We're not a democracy. We're a representative republic with principles of democracy, and your voices need to be heard in a controlled, passionate, nonviolent way, and having another voice up there, and Rudy is connected. I hope. I don't know for sure, but I remember, wasn't New York's box tax like 70% or something crazy? And then it rolled back to the 20s or 30s and it got reasonable. I'm hoping maybe Giuliani was part of that, because, that kind of crazy taxation, crazy regulation, or forced regulation / laws / executive orders, crazy ones that just come out immediately in a reactionary sense, are generally, in my opinion, don't last, aren't in the best interest of the people, and we're supposed to be compromising to come up with those things that, better us as a country, as citizens, and, as a nation.
Yeah, now I do see there is one scenario through the cabinet I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. So I kind of follow now this is the time where everyone speculates who's going to get these slots.
Oh yeah.
Now with the FDA falls under the HHS, Health and Human Services. Mm-hmm. There is talk that Governor Rick Scott of Florida, who has been a supporter of the industry, he's come out and basically written to the FDA decrying these regulations. He's one of the names being mentioned for that secretary spot. Now, at the same time, usually what I've seen, I kind of started going through the history a bit. When there's a new president, they usually put in a new head of the FDA. Mm-hmm. So that could be another thing that possibly. Now, I don't know what happens to Mitch Zeller, who handles tobacco. I'm not sure how eventually how much overturn there's going to be, so I can't say that. Other than there is a possibility that we could get some more cigar-friendly people into these slots. Then I think what you'll see, this is what I think will happen, it may come down to certain things may not be enforced. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not being overly optimistic. Don't get me, I don't think the regulations are going to be unenforced. I think there'll be certain things that may be mitigated within whatever, I guess, the executive powers can do. So I think that's one scenario I would look at if that HHS commission, that secretary spot is the one I'm eyeing right now. Who that's going to be, and are they going to be sympathetic to that? Now, Rudy goes in there and says to Trump on that committee, as they're doing this transition, hey, put this guy in here, and here's why. So you may see some influence that way with Rudy.
No, absolutely. I mean, every time we switch administrations, And even parties. I mean, we have new presidents. Sometimes it stays at the same party. New individuals. It's not uncommon within all the bureaucracies of federal agencies and federal organizations, whatever they might be, that the leader, the head of the org chart, the person who is on the money or on the big office, it's not uncommon that that person will change because either one, they're not asked to stay, they know they're not going to be happy working under a different party, they don't necessarily want to work under that individual who's the president or their new boss if they're a secretary or undersecretary. So that kind of churn is not uncommon. What you do want to put in place is someone who wants to help the people. I would hope if you're in government, you're there to kind of help the people, the citizens, help your other agencies, your own agency. And that if someone gets in to the FDA at different levels, that person is a strong enough leader to go, all right, well, here's how we're going to do things. You know, if something is a law, in my opinion, especially when it comes to a consumable product, we do need to say, this is it. It needs to be this way. For hopefully, it's the law is a safety issue, or it's and I'll call it a legitimate safety issue, not a health issue, a safety issue. Like, well, we don't want more milk out of China that's going to have poison in it. You know, it needs to be checked. The regulations are reasonable, and that the organization, you know, switches their mindset a little bit, and I think that's normal and to be expected. You know, we've got a Republican, I call him a sort of kind of Republican president, because I don't think it was the Republican anybody in the Republican Party wanted. So
Right.
There's a little blow up there, and he can come in and go, that's fine, you did it that way, but no, we're doing it this way now, whatever that may be. And he's got both the House, he's got he's got the Senate as well as the Congress, and maybe they can accomplish a lot with the FDA and regulations. And just, you know, the best way is in a funding bill when it comes up, that a congressman or a senator, and usually I think the Senate comes second after all the big vote in Congress, they put it into a funding bill. And it's really simple, just the exemption that we wanted as part, and when I say we, I'm the most peripheral part of the cigar industry, that little exemption we wanted for hand-rolled premium cigars, you know, it's a couple of paragraphs. You get that into a funding bill, that's huge, and that's legitimate, and that stays, because everybody wants their money, good or bad, in their budgets, and they want things out. That's a great way to get it. And then it becomes, a codicil to the current law. But the FDA probably likes to grow their kingdom and their fiefdom, and it's going to take a while. But I have hope alive like you do, Coop. I think in the next couple of years, something's going to happen that'll impact the cigar industry in a really good way, and maybe just minimize all the, you know, some of the paperwork, like Fred Rui from Nomad was talking about in the first half of the show. Just make it easier, or just the exemption. I thought the exemption was one of the most reasonable things about tobacco. It specified cigars, a certain type of cigars, a certain segment of cigars, while leaving the rest and those other much more monolithic, much more established, much larger money than cigars is, you know, cigarette and other tobaccos that are out there. So, you know, maybe we'll all compromise more in the next 4 years. But, you know, hey, Obama had both the House and the Senate when he came in for 2 years, and not a whole lot happened then. So we just kind of wait and see. You know, I just wish the parties and the people that we elect would compromise more and quit trying to just say it's our way or no way at all. So
Yeah. I'll say one more point on this. So I believe, this is my belief, I don't have any inside information. I believe there's going to be another petition to the White House next year.
Nice.
Now, I know people are probably rolling their eyes, okay? And I am too, to some extent. I do think this is very, very important, because if there's going to be a voice that the people are really upset about this is the way the number is going to be quantified. This is my wish to the industry. If anyone's listening, I doubt they are. Right?
They are. No, Coop, they are. They listen to you guys.
Okay, look, we need to change how we're executing the petitions. This needs to be a grassroots effort. It cannot be a Facebook effort. Otherwise, we're gonna fall short.
Yeah.
When I'm saying everyone this has to be person to person, physical. Get them to sign this in your cigar store. If you're a rep and you're coming into consumers and retailers, that's the way this is going to get done. And I think we can show the numbers that way.
Yeah,
But
the best thing I saw early, I think it was earlier in this year or maybe last year, I forget, a couple of tobacconists right at the cash register had a tablet or an iPad with the petition right there on the screen, so that when you made a purchase, you just mentioned it in passing. It took nobody more than just a minute to scribble their signature, answer a follow-up question or so, and submit the petition, because it's really only those quantifiable numbers. The government, the bureaucracy, the elected officials, what has the most impact? Whatever they can quantify. They like big data, big numbers, because that tells them who's screaming the loudest, who's making the most noise, who gets the most attention, who gets the most funding when they go to Congress again, is when they have data and numbers to put forth that say, this is a concern, we need to address this. And I forgot the shop, I used to know it off the top of my head. He just put a tablet right by the cash register, and then sure enough, it took off over social media, and more folks started having them in their shops by the cash registers. I even know reps, when they were on the road, they've all, not all of them, but a lot of them had laptops or smartphone devices. They'd have the petition there and say, hey, have you not signed it yet? If you haven't, let's, take care of it, because that's what matters. Phone calls are great too. I mean, if you want to overwhelm Washington, D.C. and Congress, jam up the and it sounds strange, and it's a little more digital now than it used to be, but you can still overwhelm the switchboard and the phones in Congress. But I don't think people are too likely to do that now. So the petition drive, I think you're absolutely right. A new petition, I think the same basic sentiments there, but a brand new one will have a lot more impact.
yeah, and I think, like I said, if we need to get 100,000, that's tough. But we got to like 23, I think, with the last one. The first one we got like the 40, but we had more time and it was a lower threshold. Yeah. I think the first one was executed a lot better than the second one. But I think this one, it's going to come down to execution. And what I mean by that is, put it on Facebook. You're probably going to get it if you're going to go through social media, which it's going to probably be another 23,000. But think about when you go into that cigar shop, how many people don't even know about that petition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's where the numbers are going to happen. So
it's like Fred said, be the lime in the marketing, do the unusual, different.
Yes.
And no one social media platform does it all.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of good reps out there. Take the time to do this is what I would say as well.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I think that we'll wrap it up here. And by the way, one last comment. Some great conversation in the chat room. Want to thank guys like Kruk, Josh Fox, my buddy from Charlotte. Riz stays in there. There's some really good conversation going on about this as well. So on the Facebook chat, I should say. So thanks, everybody. We'll be back with us.
Thanks for having me, not to interrupt.
No, we got one more segment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, God, we do. I'm looking at my cigars here. Absolutely, we do.
Yeah, so we'll be back with our Stogies of the Week.